Kingston, Jamaica, August 3rd, 2025, 10 a.m. Bob Marley held the VR headset like it was a weapon. His grandson Ziggy stood in front of him, trying not to laugh. "Grandpa, it's not going to hurt you. Just put it on." Bob shook his head, his gray dreadlocks swaying. "This is unnatural, man. Why would I want to be in a fake world when the real world is right here?" Ziggy sighed. "Because 50 million people want to see you perform, and they can't all fly to Jamaica. This way, everyone can be in the same room. Virtually." Bob looked skeptical but curious. At 80 years old, he'd seen technology go from vinyl records to streaming. But this was different. This was stepping into a computer. Still, he was intrigued. "Show me how it works." Ziggy helped Bob put on the Meta Quest Pro headset. The moment it powered on, Bob gasped. He was standing in a white room that stretched infinitely in every direction. "Where am I?" his voice echoed. Ziggy's voice came through the speakers. "You're in the Metaverse, Grandpa. It's a virtual world. Look down." Bob looked down and saw his hands, but they weren't his real hands. They were digital, younger. He moved his fingers, and the digital hands moved perfectly in sync. "This is crazy," Bob whispered. Ziggy laughed. "Wait until you see your avatar." A mirror appeared in front of Bob. He looked at his reflection and froze. It was him, but digital. They'd scanned his body and created a perfect virtual version. Same gray dreadlocks. Same worn face with wisdom etched into every wrinkle. Same gentle eyes. But he could move in ways his 80-year-old body couldn't anymore. He jumped. His avatar jumped 3 feet high. He spun around. No knee pain, no back pain. He was physically free in a way he hadn't been in decades. "I can move," Bob said, his voice cracking with emotion. "Like I'm young again." 3 weeks earlier, Meta had approached Bob with an offer. They wanted to host the first major concert in their new Metaverse platform. They'd asked young artists, but Bob's team convinced them to try something different. What if you got a legend, someone who represents timeless music? Meta was skeptical. Would an 80-year-old understand virtual reality? But when they pitched it to Bob, he surprised everyone by saying yes. "If this technology can bring people together," Bob had said, "then it's not evil. It's just a tool. And tools can be used for good or bad. We choose good." The concert was scheduled for August 15th, 2025. Bob spent 2 weeks learning how to perform in VR. It was awkward at first. He couldn't feel his guitar. It was digital. But the engineers created haptic feedback that mimicked the strings. Slowly, Bob adapted. He practiced in virtual spaces, learning how to move, how to interact with digital crowds. The wildest part? In the Metaverse, Bob could do things impossible in real life. He could fly. He could make it rain virtual flowers. He could change the entire environment with a thought. But Bob didn't want gimmicks. "Just give me a stage and my guitar," he told the developers. "The music speaks for itself." August 15th, 2025, arrived. Bob sat in his home studio in Jamaica, VR headset on, surrounded by technical equipment. Around the world, 50 million people logged into the Metaverse from 167 countries. Rich people with expensive VR setups. Poor kids using cheap cardboard viewers on old phones. Everyone entered the same virtual space. A massive stadium that didn't exist in real life. It could hold infinite people. The stage was simple, just like Bob requested. Wood, warm lights, a stool, a microphone. Nothing flashy. At 8 p.m. EST, Bob's avatar appeared on stage. The crowd of 50 million digital avatars erupted. You could hear the roar, even though none of it was real. Bob looked out at the sea of avatars, every skin color, every age, every country, people who could never afford to see him in person, people with disabilities who couldn't travel, people from war-torn countries who couldn't leave, all together in one space. Bob felt tears in his real eyes back in Jamaica. This was what he'd preached his whole life: unity, one love, and technology had finally made it literally possible. "Good evening, world," Bob said into the virtual microphone. His voice transmitted to 50 million headsets simultaneously. "I don't understand his technology, but I understand people, and I see all of you, every single one. Welcome." He started playing One Love. His digital fingers moved across the digital guitar. But something strange happened. The music felt real, not just sounding real, feeling real. People in the virtual crowd started to sway. Then something impossible occurred. A glitch. That's what the engineers called it later. But it felt like magic. For exactly 4 minutes and 23 seconds, everyone in the metaverse felt connected. Not just watching the same concert. Actually connected. A woman in Tokyo felt the emotion of a man in Brazil. A teenager in Kenya felt the heartbreak of a grandmother in Norway. 50 million consciousnesses touched for a brief moment. Scientists couldn't explain it. The technology wasn't designed to do that. But it happened. And everyone felt it. In the crowd was a 12-year-old girl named Emma from Ohio. Emma had cerebral palsy. She'd been in a wheelchair her entire life. But in the metaverse, her avatar could walk, could run, could dance. When Bob played Three Little Birds, Emma's avatar danced for the first time in her life. Her mother, watching through the screen, sobbed. Emma was smiling wider than she'd smiled in years. For those 4 minutes, she wasn't disabled. She was free, and she felt connected to 50 million people who saw her as whole. Bob felt the connection too. Even though he was in Jamaica wearing a headset, he felt those 50 million souls, their pain, their joy, their hope. It was overwhelming. He stopped playing mid-song, just stopped. The crowd went silent. Bob's avatar stood there, frozen. Engineers panicked. Was the system crashing? But Bob spoke, his voice shaking. "I feel you, all of you. I don't know how, but I feel you, your pain, your love, your fear, your hope. We really are one." Technology didn't create disconnection. It just revealed what was always true. We were always one. We just forgot. The crowd didn't cheer. They were too stunned, 50 million people processing what had just happened. Then slowly avatars started moving toward the stage. Not rushing, just walking, coming closer. Bob's security team in the real world started to worry. "Bob, log out. Something's wrong with the system." But Bob waved them off. He walked to the edge of the virtual stage and sat down, legs dangling. Avatars surrounded him, thousands, then millions, just sitting with him. No words, just presence. A 9-year-old boy's avatar approached. He was from Syria. The boy had learned English from Bob Marley's songs while hiding in bomb shelters. He typed in the chat, "Thank you for giving me hope when I had none." Bob read it and started crying. Real tears in Jamaica. His avatar reached out and touched the boy's avatar's hand. In the metaverse, you couldn't feel physical touch. But somehow, they both felt something. The boy, in his refugee camp in Turkey, felt seen. Bob, in his studio in Jamaica, felt purpose. Mark Zuckerberg, watching from Meta headquarters, was stunned. "This isn't possible," he kept saying. "The technology doesn't allow for this kind of interaction." His engineers checked the code. Everything was running normally. But something beyond the code was happening. Bob Marley had turned a concert into a spiritual experience, in virtual reality, the most artificial environment possible, and somehow it felt like the most real thing any of them had ever experienced. Bob played for 2 hours, but the set list didn't matter. Between songs, he talked. He listened. He responded to chat messages. He brought avatars on stage to share their stories. A veteran from Iraq who struggled with PTSD. A single mother from Detroit working 3 jobs. A transgender teenager from Poland facing discrimination. Bob gave them space. He gave them voice. He gave them dignity. And 50 million people watched and learned that everyone has a story worth hearing. The concert ended at 10:30 p.m. Bob's avatar bowed. The crowd didn't leave. They just sat there. 10 million people stayed logged in for another hour, just existing together in that virtual space. No music, no entertainment, just connection. Meta engineers had never seen anything like it. People don't stay in the metaverse after events end, one engineer said. They always log out immediately. But not this time. This time, people wanted to preserve the feeling. Bob took off his VR headset back in Jamaica. His face was soaked with tears. His family surrounded him, worried. "Grandpa, are you okay?" Bob nodded slowly. "I just performed for 50 million people, but it felt like I was sitting with one person. With every person. I felt their souls, all of them. Technology didn't separate us. It connected us deeper than I've ever felt in a physical concert." He looked at Ziggy. "We need to do this again, but not for money. We make it free. Anyone with a phone can access it because this isn't entertainment. This is healing." The video of the concert went viral, not just clips, the entire 2-hour experience. People who couldn't attend live watched it and reported feeling the same connection. Therapists started using the recording in group therapy sessions. Schools showed it in classes about empathy. Religious leaders of every faith praised it as proof that technology could serve spiritual purposes. The concert won awards. Time magazine called it the most important cultural event of 2025. But the real impact was personal. Emma, the 12-year-old with cerebral palsy, started a nonprofit called Avatars for Accessibility. She helped other disabled people access VR so they could experience freedom of movement. Within 6 months, 100,000 disabled individuals had attended virtual events where their limitations didn't exist. Emma credited Bob. "He showed me that limitations are sometimes just physical. My soul was always free. VR just let me see it." The Syrian boy who thanked Bob got evacuated to Canada 3 months later. A family who'd seen his message in the concert chat sponsored his refugee application. He was safe. When reporters asked what he wanted to do in Canada, he said, "Learn guitar, like Bob Marley, so I can give other people hope the way he gave me hope." Meta released a statement. "What happened during Bob Marley's concert was a technological anomaly we cannot explain. For 4 minutes and 23 seconds, our systems showed connection patterns that shouldn't be possible. We've studied the code for weeks and found nothing wrong. Our conclusion, some things transcend technology. Bob Marley's concert proved that soul is real, even in virtual spaces." Bob never fully understood the technology, but he didn't need to. He understood people, and whether those people were physical or digital, standing in front of him or on the other side of the world behind a screen, he knew how to connect with them. That's what legends do. They don't adapt to platforms. Platforms adapt to them. Bob Marley didn't change for the metaverse. The metaverse changed because of Bob Marley. 3 months later, Bob did another metaverse concert. This time, 87 million people attended. It was free, accessible on any device. And once again, for a few minutes, something impossible happened. People felt connected. 50 million souls, then 87 million. All proving the same truth Bob had preached for 60 years. We are one. Technology can try to divide us or connect us. It's our choice. And on August 15, 2025, in a virtual world that didn't physically exist, 50 million people chose connection. They chose unity, They chose love. Because an 80-year-old legend with gray dreadlocks put on a headset and reminded them that one love isn't just a song. It's a truth. And truth works everywhere, even in the Metaverse. Especially in the Metaverse. Because if love can exist in a world that isn't real, imagine how powerful it is in the world that is. That's what would have happened if Bob Marley entered the Metaverse in 2025. He would have broken it, not with technology, but with soul. And he would have proven that no matter how advanced we get, no matter how digital our lives become, the most powerful force in the universe is still human connection, even when the humans aren't technically human, even when it's all just code and pixels. Love finds a way. Bob Marley showed us that. One more time, at 80 years old, in a world that didn't exist, making it more real than anything we'd ever felt.